Star conflict.
Star conflict. It's a space
Because they call Jurassic Park, of course.
battle.
No. Dinosaur Forest.
Dinosaur trail. Blazer of dinosaurs.
I think they had a Terminator one, but it was called Terminatrix.
Yes, that was the thing. Oh, that's, I think, the sci-fi movie stuff. Transmorphers. Well, guess what that was based on?
Transformers.
Wrong.
Oh, what?
No, it was Transformers.
Oh, okay. I know. I used to watch those.
There was some good ones, though. And some not good ones, probably. I didn't watch them all. But I watched a lot of them.
Yeah.
Welcome to Nerddom. This is Dan.
This is Matt.
We're here to talk about... We're going to mix this up. It's not just games.
That's right.
Star Wars.
We're going to talk about prequels.
Prequels. Star Wars, the first episode of Star Wars. Because the first episode was episode 4.
That's right.
A New Hope.
It's a weird place to start.
The galaxy is in a period of civil war. But not in episode 1.
That's right. They had the what was it called? The Trade
Federation.
Trade Federation, that's right.
The Separatists.
Separatists.
And the Republic.
Yeah.
And they are not agreeing with one another. There are trade blockades, there are treaties, and there are politics. And there's Jar Jar.
Lots and lots of politics.
And Liam Neeson. I don't
want to cause anyone to feel blue or down. So I'm going to try to keep myself a little under control and not get into a fight with my co-host here.
I liked it. There's stuff I didn't like, but I mostly liked it.
Where do you want to start, Matt?
Space.
After
the crawl finishes, we go into a spaceship. Going towards another spaceship. That's episode 4. We get a lot here. So, first of all, this movie was 99. It's easy to forget that at the time when this got announced in the 90s and on its way to release, this was like a big deal. Like in more recent times, if you remember the hype building up to Avengers Endgame, even the hype building up to episode 7, this was on par with those things culturally, except the internet was not nearly as useful or reliable, which means there was even more of that like speculation and excitement for people.
Right.
It's been like widely known now, but when this movie was on its way, people were going to the theaters, buying movie tickets. I think it was for stuff like Meet Joe Black and The Waterboy at the time that were running the trailer.
Yep.
To watch the trailer and then walk out of the movie. And there's argument to be made if that helped the sales of those movies. Yeah. But this was like a big deal. And regardless of like love or hate of the film, this was one of those things that you don't actually see that often in terms of like the worldwide public eye for a movie.
Wait, let's set the mood really quickly because we lived this.
We did live this.
Now what led up to this was George Lucas released the remasters of
special editions.
Episodes 4, 5, and 6.
In 97.
In the theater.
I know, in 97.
Remember? And he added all that stuff in them.
He did. Yeah, I did like 4 minutes of footage to each movie. That's
the lead up to releasing episode 1 in theaters.
But it was to get it fresh for everybody.
It was heavy Lucas. Heavy Lucas.
You know what, CGI...
And Lucas is the one that put the Ewoks in the movie.
If you think Lucas is cheesy, and he is...
He's a cornball.
But sometimes if you go, I love Star Wars, it's easy to forget. Like, he totally created Star Wars. So the whole idea of like, oh man, he's corny, I don't like it. But at the same time, I love what he made, and I'm confused. So, Ewoks are fine with me, honestly. They took Jar Jar a little bit far. I'm getting that out of the way. I have no beef with Jar Jar, but too much. It was overkill. The CGI was not in the state of being ready.
Right.
That same goes with the special editions.
I'm in a different place when it comes to Jar Jar. Now, I don't think he should have been in the movie at all. And if he was a real person or a real thing...
I don't really have a problem with Jar Jar. Again, I think it was just a little bit too much. There's always been this persisting lore among the fandom that Jar Jar was intended to be like a greater Sith Lord, like maybe Darth Plagueis, whom we never actually
But that's not canon. That's not canon.
I'm just saying, I'm saying this was always a discussed idea.
Matt, it's non-canonical.
It's not canonical. They had like laser cannons.
Yeah.
That were like pirate ships, but not. But no, like that never got explored because all the feedback was not that good. So they had to kind of cut back Jar Jar enormously later. But it's interesting to wonder
almost completely
but it's interesting to wonder if that was the original intention of Lucas to do Jar Jar that way. It's an interesting idea of like, oh, he'll be subversion. He's just this goofy, klutzy person. But again, even if that was the goal, they still overdid it, I think.
I completely disagree. I think that George Lucas wanted to make a kids movie.
Maybe. I mean, in its heart, Star Wars is kind of, it's an adventure. It's fantasy.
No, I get that. We can all enjoy the never-ending story again, or witches, or any of that stuff. Star Wars Episode 1, I can't watch it.
It doesn't bother me.
Angry watching that movie.
You know what? I'll give credit. It's easy. Like, okay, the CGI doesn't hold up that well in that movie, but a lot of the practical effects they do are still look pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, in some of the CGI isn't that bad. It's just it wasn't finished at the time.
Yeah.
This is a time when you could get CGI in a movie, because also an easy thing to forget. The idea's been around a long time in film, but it wasn't until like the late 90s when they were like, how do we regularly use this and consistently make it look good?
Yeah.
Only so many movies managed to pull this off throughout the 90s. And Star Wars, I think if they had pulled back just a little tiny bit, it would have looked much better, because there were places where the CGI just didn't quite stick the landing. So it doesn't take me out of the movie, but it kind of does if I'm trying to do, like, say, a marathon.
Right.
Because you go back to those old films, it's all practical, and it looks good.
It looks good, because it's called movie magic, which
Angry.
doesn't exist anymore.
No, it's almost all gone.
This is why I think he was intending to make a kids movie. For one, we go to Jar Jar first, because that's obviously the easiest thing. So he includes that character. Then all the droids that they have in the movie are all bumbling idiots. As Pat Oswalt will say,
You're like Star Wars? You like Darth Vader? On this one, you get to see him as a little kid.
You get to see him as a little kid.
it's got Darth Vader as a little kid, and he's having little kid adventures. He's going on a little race. Ugh.
I've had to do a lot of thinking on that. Okay, so I'm just gonna throw this out there. On revisiting these films,
Right.
it's a bit clunky in places.
Macaroni.
Because I tried rewriting it in my head. How to
As
utilize
we all have.
Well, as how to utilize Anakin Skywalker. And I think, you know what? The way they did it might have been the best way to do it, from the idea of seeing the characters fall. Like, you have to have that shift. Like, he starts out as this wonderful person who just breaks over time.
Yeah.
I love the concept of that narratively. I think it was handled funky, but I think that's not completely the fault of that movie. I think it's the type of story that would struggle to be told as well in the time span it was given, because so much of episode 1 is not about Anakin. So I feel like that's just, part of it. And just really quick on the droids. I mean, right away I've had this discussion with people, and I'm actually agreeing with you. That's the funny part. The droids in the original have always had their own personalities and sass.
Yeah.
But I agree, some of it is a little bit, doesn't make any logical sense, because like the battle droids, I get it. There's an AI sort of idea to these characters, but they're like designed, built, and programmed for only combat, essentially. Right. And before someone says something, I get it. They can kind of do a bunch of things. But a combat military droid isn't going to be a bumbling mess that doesn't know what it's doing in a situation it's designed to be in.
Yeah.
So that did bother me.
Yeah.
Why are you, that doesn't compute, blast them. Like, that did bother me. I'm like, this is why I'm surprised that there's even being a war right now, if that's the primary threat.
Right.
Because that they don't seem very good at what they do.
No, they're not.
And they're only about 5 feet tall, which is fine if they're all got weapons, but then, again, they just don't seem that threatening.
They all have humoristic parts to them, too, where they're Three Stoogie.
Yeah, the battle droids...
That's funny.
The battle droids is the only time that bothered me.
Yeah.
Any other droids, I'm like, you know what? This is in the universe, par for the course, it's fine.
there's no inkling. I would have liked more if the kid had some problems. He had no problems in this one. He was just a fun kid who got taken from his mommy and then got to fly a spaceship accidentally for a little bit.
I think it's that he is so young, and it's that the gravity of his life hasn't actually kicked in for him. Like, you know, he's a slave. He's, you know, just working on machines, but he has these dreams, and it's like, I think he's sort of scenario-wise been kind of lucky, but you could also chalk part of that up to he's in, like, I guess by design, he's really strong with the Force, so maybe things are a little easier for him, but I think seeing just a little bit more conflict from Anakin earlier on would have helped set the stage for the ship.
Besides a shadow?
Personality.
That's all they show in the first was a little shadow.
Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, like, in episode 2, which we'll get into later.
We'll get into that later. They did a bad job with his downfall. They kind of crammed it all into one.
That's what I mean by, I feel like the narrative's good, but it's not told with a good pacing. But otherwise, like, again, there's a lot to unfold with how movies are made and written, but for one, there's some good stuff in there as, like, a simple movie. And I'm going to say this out of the way now, as a trilogy, 1, 2, and 3, don't rehash the original films. They do their own thing, but they do completely succeed at world building in a way that actually does make a lot of sense. So I'm going to give that credit right now. I'm going to say it. There's an excellent through line in the trilogy.
So, and then something got introduced in episode 1 that didn't exist in 4 or 5 and 6.
I know what you're going to say.
What?
Metachlorians.
Metachlorians.
But then they don't really come up again.
Yeah, they don't really. It's like this weird introduction of something. You're like, okay, we're building. We're doing some, because I get this, that I've heard complaints before that the first Star Wars movies were, you know, normal acting and everything. They had normal dialogue, and then you go back to the prequels, and it's very proper. Yes, my young Padawan, and yes, Master, and
but
I understand that it's coming from a different era when the Jedi were
organized, existed.
And that's their language. Like, if you went to a Taekwondo class, you're going to be doing that, even if you're here in America, you're going to be doing that language a little bit in that style.
You're in that immersion.
Yeah.
Which we don't have in the original.
I get that. But they did it in such a way that every actor acted that way. Even young Anakin acted, he had stiff acting. I think it was a bad casting choice, to be honest with you. Just like who they casted, Christian,
Hayden Christensen.
Hayden Christensen,
Actually, see, whole other thing, I think he was a good cast, but you're limited by direction, too.
Right.
Like, writing, director.
I don't think he was a good choice. I really don't. But not for any particular reason, really.
Just didn't work for you?
It didn't work for me.
Okay.
It didn't feel like this guy is going to turn into Darth Vader. And it didn't feel like it in episode 3 at all, that he turned into Darth Vader.
That's where I think... See, episode 1 is a great place to start with all this, not just because of the number being before the other ones.
Right.
But, like, I'm gonna go, like, super Star Wars for a minute. Like, not the Nintendo version, just with the talking version.
Right.
And it's a hard game.
All the Super Nintendo
They're
ones
really
are
tough. Like, I'm gonna, I almost lost my train of thought. Now I'm thinking about where you're in the little speeder and you're just running around to the different places.
Yeah.
Oh man. Good times though, even though it makes me upset. Because I can't beat it. Anyway. I'm almost wondering if it's intentionally written that way and you have to take it or leave it as an audience. Star Wars has done a lot of that in, like, regardless of feelings on the movies, like love or hate, there is a lot of nuance in all of Star Wars. And yes, even in the newer ones, there's stuff in there that is really clever, but like with episode 1, I'd have to wonder if you're meant to be like, I don't see this kid turning into Vader. Right. I wonder if that's legitimately part, not just in writing, like how could this sweet boy turn into such a monster? No, like genuinely, like everything I feel here, I just don't see it. And I have to still think that's intentional because it's hard to say, because it's the same with the Jedi. Like, the lore of the Jedi, if you think back to the original movies, we get a lot.
Yeah. But
we actually don't get as much as I think we remember getting. Like, how often do they in detail talk about who the Jedi and what they actually were.
Right.
Like, we don't get much. So seeing them actually operating, it's kind of an almost, this is what I pictured. But also, I don't know what I'm expecting. And I think that's part of that whole idea is they've been in power so long and they've had this rigid system in place and they're very dogmatic and they're very set in their ways.
That's what I was saying.
To a fault.
I've heard a lot of people complain about it, and I get it.
But I think that's intentional.
But I don't think it should then also be the other actors and actresses who aren't Jedi, because that's not their way of life.
And that's what I wondered about the universe, too. I get a little disoriented.
Because
with that.
Padme speaks like that as well. It's like, Natalie Portman's a great actress, but she's not convincing to me in these movies, in the prequels.
But I wonder if she's supposed to be dry like that. I'm not sure.
Well, she wouldn't be, because she's a passionate politician.
That's true, too.
She's looking for truth and equality and stuff.
Is it possible that it's like, it's just not a good script?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's George Lucas, man.
But
he's a cornball.
But there's still some fun things. Like, okay, let's do this. You have to give something you like, and then back it up with something you don't like. Well, we'll take turns.
All right, okay. Well, obviously, the fight at the end of episode 1.
Duel of Fates.
Duel of Fates. It's a good fight. It's a good... We don't really get to know Qui-Gon Jinn.
He was a good addition.
We don't really get to know him in the movie because he's, again, they're introducing to us this rigid Jedi tone and speak and way of life and everything, so you don't really get to know him.
He was kind of a rule breaker.
Yeah, he was a rule breaker, but I'm saying that you don't go, oh my god, when he dies, because you don't know him. And then, but we all know Obi-Wan. We get to see him as younger, and he has his own opinions in the thing. He expresses them to his master and stuff. So you're like, okay, they are doing a pretty decent job of building Obi-Wan, but we know him already, so we care about him.
We wonder about what he's going to go through.
There's no lead up to Qui-Gon. There's no real character building that he goes through. You know what I mean?
I think I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Because you have
but yeah, I love the fight. I wasn't taken aback when he killed Qui-Gon Jinn because I never saw him in the other movies, so I figured he had to die eventually.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
It was just expected. Just like the downfall of Anakin. If he was trying to sideline us with us, what's he... You know what I mean? Like, we know he's going to be evil, so why are you trying to why are you trying to surprise us?
I think Qui-Gon is intentionally a character that doesn't really have too big of an arc. Like, he's there to set the stage. Because, like, he's clearly, like, a good Jedi, but he clearly doesn't think like the rest of the Jedi Masters. And they even say offhand, I think Obi-Wan points out, is like, if you would just follow the rules, you'd be on the council. And Qui-Gon has this intuition of, like, you should follow the rules, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Which later on, in later films, Obi-Wan very much teaches this way.
Yeah, I know.
So I think that's the whole Obi-Wan's being raised by the Jedi Council, but he's still, what's the right way to do things?
Yeah.
Like, do I do it totally rigidly, or do I follow my gut a bit? And I think that's more Qui-Gon's position, because again, totally other time rant, but a lot of arguments made too. If Qui-Gon had survived and raised Anakin probably wouldn't have fallen.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Another thing is Darth Maul to me. Now, I think everyone likes Darth Maul.
He's pretty interesting.
The only one that hates Darth Maul?
Not too many.
I was only disappointed in the fact that and I'm excluding Clone Wars here, the show.
Okay.
Because it said, I don't even think this was a thought at the time.
Probably not. Hard to
So they kill him off, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like this big amount of justice has been done because you barely see him through the movie.
That's true. He's not in it much.
And I think it would have been a much better move if he had either escaped or defeated his rivals to begin with.
I agree.
The beginning, just to show that the Sith are back.
Yeah.
He could have shown that he was much more
of a presence.
of a problem and probably more powerful.
Like attacked other Jedi, maybe.
Or even just the two. If he had defeated them in some way that he had to escape then after.
Okay.
I think that would have been a much better build-up for 2.
I
They
agree.
could have introduced his death in that.
Introduced Count
Dooku, as instead of just all of a sudden Count Dooku, again, someone, if you're just watching the movies, you don't know.
And yeah,
So
that's a complicated, I think, a hindsight play that happened in the Clone Wars show, because later through that show, good show, by the way.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Maul coming back through, spoilers. If you haven't seen this, though, I don't know why you clicked on. But thank you for clicking on. Please leave a like. Maul has a whole arc through that, too, and I think that's really interesting. I think, yes, they should have kept him around at least a little bit longer, and we should have seen in real time the shift of the apprentice system for the Sith, which, okay, you do see that in 3, but the whole way they function, like Dooku is in the wings, kind of, you know what I mean? Now, I don't know the timeline on when Dooku went to the dark side exactly,
right.
but it clearly takes time to bring someone in. Seeing that in play earlier on, at the very least, would have taught us that whole, which Episode 1 gave us, was the rule of 2.
Yeah.
Like, was something at the time, I believe, pretty new. So seeing that in real time would have been.
I believe Darth Bane was the one.
I know, but when we actually got the information. In the actual fandom.
Yeah.
I
think it would have made for better lore building if if they had kept fucking
played it out slower.
It would have been a scare to the Jedi. It never seemed like the Sith were a scare to them. They always dealt with it calm and collectively, and it wasn't good lore building, in my opinion, that they defeat one and in the next movie, he beats us a little bit, but at the beginning of the third one, we're going to beat him anyways.
We're really in trouble,
yeah.
Yoda gives moments.
I never felt like the Jedi were in trouble until the end of Episode 3. So they should have given a graver situation.
I agree.
Again, in Episode 1, it's a kid's movie. And they didn't have any scenes in it of grave danger or doom or anything like that. It was just a kid's movie.
And that's where 2 had the opportunity. 2 had the opportunity to stack the deck. And they did in a lot of ways, to its credit. 2's really an improvement over 1 in so many ways.
It is, but it's got its... We'll talk
about
those in
another video. It has its issues, but yes, narratively, 1 should have played just a couple more elements to carry over.
Yeah.
Again, I think the Sith presence, I get it, we're starting small, but I think it's look, we know Sidious is Palpatine. They never try to make that an intensive secret, even in the movie itself, for the audience, because we get it. Even to a newcomer, you're like, those two are too similar. But how does this work? If you came into Star Wars totally blind, somehow, 1 would leave you asking a lot of questions. So I try to look at the movies that way.
Yeah.
Maul, if not playing it out the way you suggested, I think should have been in the film just more to help us do something with that. Maybe even having more connections. I always thought it'd be cool to have had Maul and Qui-Gon oriented in some way, because later with the Clone Wars stuff, the rivalry between Maul and Obi-Wan is very personal.
Yeah.
So having something preceding that would have actually been, in hindsight, really fascinating. But that's a rant, again, for another time. What else would you say you like and dislike?
Well, okay, so there's not a lot of so I can't seem to reach for that, but I hated the whole speed thing and the gambling with the flying whatever that guy was.
Watto.
Whatever he was.
I'm a Toydarian!
It's the elephant trunk flying thing.
Yes.
And it didn't do anything for me. It was boring. The race thing, the whole prepping for it, and hey, you guys remember Jabba the Hutt? There he is. He's in the crowd.
Okay, I thought adding the kind of cameo was a little weird. We don't need every character to still be around in this timeline, but or at least at this point in time. I thought the pod races was an interesting addition. What was weird for me was not seeing it come back up in the trilogy, because I actually kind of earlier called this is fascinating. We're spending a lot of time with this to kind of show Anakin's capabilities outside of Jedi stuff, just being a pilot. So it's that's kind of cool. How is this going to come back? into play.
Right.
We don't see a whole lot of that. I understand we see Anakin's like piloting skills.
We
but
see too much of it. Is my point.
Okay.
I don't mind it being there.
It is a big centerpiece.
Yeah, I think they should have really.
What would you have
toned it
done?
down.
What would you have done in place of it?
Well, we've shortened it.
Okay.
Shorten that to begin with. I would have shown more of the conflict once it started. You know, they're on Tatooine,
Yeah.
right? So, and they're fighting for their independence all of a sudden, right? I would have shown more of that going on. And
Okay.
then the this is a Star Wars movie. And I'm not all about action. You know that about me. I like a lot of slow burn movies.
If anything, he complains about action sometimes.
Yeah, I do. And this is one where I'm begging for it because the pod racing scene, I fucking hate racing to begin with.
Oh, that's that's just your thing on.
But I do feel, and I think a lot of people feel that it was pretty elongated.
It's a long sequence.
I think they should have shown more desperation in the fact that Tatooine was being invaded by the droids. If you could do away with Jar Jar and make those underwater people the Gungans less stupid, because that's all they. What do you mean?
That's why I said this stuff. If it
I got
was
the jowls for it.
If it was delivered, different ways, I think it could land just a little better. Because there's always the rules of like what's too much and what's too little in a movie.
Yeah.
So, and that's tough. Because
that's what I'm saying about the movie. It was a kids' movie.
Yes.
They made the droids you would think they're harmless, and then they made the Gungans. You're like, how do they survive? They don't even seem smart enough to make the underwater place they live. Then you have the little kid.
You get to see him as a little kid.
Then you have the little kid versions of all the aliens that live on frickin'
I don't want to help you. This is
help
fun.
me. What's the planet that Luke Skywalker is from?
Tatooine.
Okay, what's the planet that they're on? Queen Amidala's planet. Naboo. I said Naboo. I wanted to show the part of Naboo more. I said Tatooine, and you let me fucking say it.
Well, I was thinking
meant
about
Naboo.
it. I was like, hold on.
Naboo. When they're invading Naboo, I wanted to see more of that. In
Okay,
lieu of the fucking pod racing thing.
I see
You
where
let me
you're
say
coming from.
Tatooine.
I see where you're coming from, though. And that does make sense.
Yeah,
I
okay,
mean,
so. But they show every race as a kid on Tatooine. Pat Oswalt had it right. You want to see everyone as a kid? Watch the fucking prequels. But it was just a kids movie. It was a fucking kids movie. What's this robot doing? It builds things. Well, if you punch it if you poke it on the nose, it turns into a little ashtray.
Some people really like the pod racers. It did open some opportunity. For example, I'm indifferent to it. You're in the wrong state to make fun of NASCAR. Oh,
I know I am, but I don't like racing.
That's fair. See, did you play episode 1 Pod Racer for Nintendo 64?
You know I have it.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, but have you played it?
Mm-hmm.
There's episode 1, the movie game for PS1. I always thought fondly of that game, but I could never get past the second level when you landed on Naboo. I always ran into a wall of droids and couldn't deflect the lasers and got shot down. But still good memories. Pretty fun. There's 1,000 games for episode 1 on multiple platforms that came out over several years. I can't name them all. I'm not sure, but I can say that some of them are awesome. Some of them might not be as good as I remember. So, hey, what's your favorite Star Wars episode 1 game? And it has to be episode 1.
Episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's only 5, man.
No, there's a bunch of them.
Is there a bunch?
There actually is, because they went... So, again, easy to forget because of timeline where we are now. The marketing push for that movie was ridiculously massive.
Remember Taco Bell's? I think I gave some to you.
Taco
the
Bell.
cup holder things?
Yes, there was Darth Maul, Queen Amidala, Georgia, Anakin, and was there just 4 of them?
No, there was.
Was there
Qui-Gon Jinn?
Was there Qui-Gon?
Yeah.
Ooh, was there Obi-Wan?
What's the ones I gave you?
I think the
gave
ones
you
I
4,
listed.
right? Oh, the ones you listed. Okay.
There was Pepsi did a deal.
Yeah.
Where there was cans with the characters on them. There was probably fast food toys.
Tons of fast food toys.
There was collectible cards, trading cards. There was just action figures. There was merchandising on every conceivable thing.
Yeah, I know. I remember. I was there. We were there, Matt.
Good times when Star Wars was just And it kind of always has been incredible. I'm not saying before that it wasn't. I mean in our lifetime, what we know.
I'm just disagreeing with you about Star Wars.
You know what? I'm a moviegoer. I like to go to premieres to stuff. The crowd, the energy, it's fun, it's electric. So those kind of movie premieres, really fun. I don't remember that one as well because it was a long time ago, but I did go to like one of the opening nights. I remember begging my parents, I'm like, "These tickets go on sale." And I knew about it. I'm like, back then, you had to go to the theater like at some point and just try to buy tickets for a future day. And like, this is the night, this is the Friday. And before that, I don't even know if it was back then. It might have been. They did the like Thursday night, midnight releases.
Sneak peeks.
Sneak peeks.
That's what it was called.
Now they just drop everything on Thursday. You know what? I think I can trace that change back to 2013. I might be wrong, but I remember Man of Steel premiered, and it was like this 8 p.m. show or whatever on the Thursday, and it was like, it's not midnight. It's like 8 o'clock. We can go. And it was this whole thing, and we all went. I don't think you went with us on that one. But like, and then I think Iron Man 3 did it. The same idea. Yeah. And then suddenly, movies just started dropping on Thursdays. Right. So the like sneak peek, the midnight thing, just vanished. But I think it was around then that changed. Star Wars probably did it, but I went on a Friday, I think. I convinced my parents to go and was like, "You have a car. We need to go." Good times. It was fun. I remember that much.
All in all, I'm gonna grade this movie right now.
All right, grade it.
D+.
Okay, I'm gonna give it 2 ratings.
Oh.
As a Star Wars movie,
all right,
I'm gonna give it a C+ because the problems do suck me out of the things that make it work a bit. To where it's like I'm trying to weigh things out, which automatically makes it harder to grade it higher. I'm gonna give it a solid C+. As a movie, objectively, like you said, a kids movie, just like fun movie, I'm gonna give it a B-. It is a fun, goofy, like sci-fi, like fantasy adventure.
So B+ and B-.
B-
are like 2 points away from each other.
C+.
C+ and B-.
Yes, they're like one.
Yeah, 1 point.
And they're like 1 parsec apart. And I'm gonna give it that one. It's just a movie. It is fun. I'm gonna give it that. But the problems with it make it harder as a Star Wars movie. But there is still stuff that feels pretty Star Wars. But I think back in the original movies, even if they could do those kind of visuals, they wouldn't have taken it as like overboard. Yeah. So that's why I'm trying to think about that.
Yeah, I remember going to the theater to see it, and I remember coming off of the old Star Wars, where they were using the movie magic and special effects.
I think I was 15 in 99.
You weren't.
It was born in 84. And it was in the summer of 99.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Where? Orange Groves.
This used to be all ocean.
All ocean.
I remember going to the theater to see it, and after watching all the original movies so many times, the special effects, movie magic, all that crap.
I did not care. I was having fun.
And then I just remember this as being 14 going, and they had CGI for all the stuff, and everything was shiny, and
it felt a little bit out of universe.
Yeah, it did.
Like, what happened to the technology? Is it better when it's clunkier and blockier? I'm a little confused.
I don't know. It looks more tangible when it's done with
practical effects.
Yeah, practical effects.
I agree. There's stuff you can't do with practical effects. And I understand that. I understand. But I don't know. Also, it turns out R2-D2 is from Naboo, for all we understand. C-3PO was built by Anakin, which is a whole other thing to unpack.
Yeah. In another video.
Obi-Wan definitely knew R2 before Episode 4. Very well.
Yeah.
So, not sure what's going on there. Also, I have more notes, but they're all for Episode 3.
Right. Oh, I got a lot for those.
I just don't want to keep jumping around.
What do you think about Episode 1?
Episode 1. Where does it stand for you in all the mainline Star Wars episode titles?
Do you hate me?
This is a great film to pick, like, what do people think about it? Because it's so 50-50 with people.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to think about it. Like, I'm just enjoying it for what it is. Like, it's got its issues. But, you know, it's a movie.
Yeah. You're a down the line kind of guy.
And there's that
Here's
scene.
the fence. I'm right up here on top of it.
There's a scene at the end credits most people
Yeah.
missed because Star Wars never used to have those.
Right.
And it's where Anakin comes into his room at the Jedi Temple and he's turning the lights on, and Mace Windu comes out and tells him about the Avengers Initiative. And it's great because now you're like, what's this gonna lead to? So we're still gonna get there, but it's pretty cool.
That sounds pretty cool. So, yeah, leave your comments or, hate mail or whatever you want to do in the comments section. And, I'm Dan at NerdDump.
And I am Matt.
Matt at NerdDump.
Matt at NerdDump.
But our names on there is also mine's just NerdDump. And Matt's is Faux Keanu.
Yep.
Because he kind of looks a little bit like Keanu Reeves.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to touch him, he has OCD.
I don't like it. I'm gonna
He
slap
doesn't
him.
like being touched.
I'm gonna hit you with
So
episode
until next
4.
time.
No, episode 1.
Episode 1.
It's here somewhere, and I'm gonna hit you with it. It's over there.
Have a good one.
Welcome to Nerd Dump.